Kia ora, I'm Chris Nichol. The Basin Reserve, holy ground for lovers of New Zealand cricket, and I'm certainly one of them. I was here in 1983 when Glenn Turner knocked up 94 off 94 balls to secure a great victory for New Zealand over England. But perhaps Glenn's greatest conquest was when he travelled to India to win the heart of a girl called Sukhi and bring her home to New Zealand. Sukhi Turner has a few triumphs of her own, including being the first woman and the first Indian mayor of Dunedin.
Well, I was born in Ludhiana, which is in the Punjab, which is in the northwest of India. And for the first 6 years of my life, I was actually with my grandparents because my mother had 3 of us in a row in sort of about 3.5 years. And so at 9 months, I went to my grandmother. So I spent those times as an only child, actually. Yeah, and I've been told that I was quite spoiled, and my grandfather actually loved having me, and he named me, and he called me Dolly, because
Dolly.
He said I looked like a doll, oh. So I must have been much admired.
Sikh is religion and culture.
Yes.
And your family were strong religious Sikhs?
Well, I don't think I would consider them strong religious. During our holidays, the family would actually go to festival days. And if there was a historical Gurdwara, which is the temple, Sikh temple, we always went and visited, and they would tell us about some of the history. I remember as young children, we were actually taken to Guru Harmandir Sahib, which is the Golden Temple.
The Golden Temple in Amritsar.
That's right.
Is, if you like, the heart of the Sikh community?
Yes, that's the place of pilgrimage. It's the holiest of the holies. It was started by the 5th Guru, the building of it, and it was built around a sarovar, which is a lake. And it was said that this place was holy.
Was education a valued mark of the Sikh culture?
Oh, very much so, very much so. In fact, it was quite interesting that, I went to an Anglican school.
Yes.
It was a sort of a leftover from the British Raj. And when I think back on it, my parents were quite liberal Sikhs. They weren't concerned that we were actually going to chapel, twice a day. We were taking part in nativity plays and learning scripture, and which was like a subject, 9 o'clock,
yes.
Was scripture. And for us, as non-Christians, it was a fascinating book, the Bible,
Very interesting. But no conflict for your parents there?
No, not at all. And later on I actually understood when my mother, she came to visit me in Worcester, where Glenn was playing cricket, and she was quite upset about something, and she wanted to get a little bit of solace, and she says, "Come on, let's go to a church." And I said, "Well, the best church to go there is the Worcester Cathedral, really, and it's a quite beautiful sort of old cathedral." And so he went over there, and I said, "Are you sure you want to go?" He says, "Yes, because God is everywhere."
Right.
So, and that's one thing that, the Sikhs do believe, that God's everywhere, and very tolerant of other religions.
Right. So when this New Zealand cricketer turned up in your life, how did your family respond to that?
Well, my father was extremely upset. For a whole year, actually, I was told by my mother, and I didn't realize I'd put him through such anxiety. And I was actually studying in the States at that time, and we had to own up and say that, that this person I was sort of pretty interested in, and I would like them to meet him. And my father said, "You just finish your degree, and you're coming back here, and you're going to have an arranged marriage."
Oh, right.
So,
how did that feel?
Well, I was, I remember at the age of about 11 or 12, I think I announced to everyone that I wasn't going to have an arranged marriage, and no one's going to tell me who I was going to get married to, and I was quite bolshy, I think. And later on, I think my council colleagues found that out too. My mother was, a lot more sort of willing to actually listen. And I think she said to my father, said, look, we may sort of lose our daughter if, we better sort of just see what he's like. So
did it stand in his favour that he was a cricketer?
No, not at all,
not at
because
all.
Dad actually played hockey.
Oh. So you and Glenn won the day.
We did, yes.
You were married in India?
No, we were actually married in London.
In London?
In London. And
A Sikh ceremony?
at a Sikh ceremony, you go around to the Granth Sahib 4 times. The man leads the way, which he thought was very symbolic. And the bride sort of follows dutifully. And Glenn had to wear a turban, a pink turban, because pink and red is sort of a colour of joy. And
Tell us about the turban, because it's such an identifiable mark and also a really important Sikh symbol.
Well, to be a Sikh, part of the Khalsa, is you've got to actually have long hair. You have to have the bangle, steel bangle, a very sort of a bangle that's it's not gold, it's actually, it used to be iron, and it sort of identifies you because it's round, and it means that circle of life, and you've got to be neat and tidy if you've got long hair, so you've got to have a little comb, which is the kanga, and to protect the poor and the oppressed, you've got to have a little kukri, and that's to defend the faith as well. And the turban is so that, you keep your hair nice and sort of, it's protected, and for the men. And of course it became a symbol of being, a very staunch person who looked after the faith.
Yes. Well, the New Zealanders, I think, turbans are worn by Sikh cricketers or Islamic terrorists. I mean, I think that's the stereotype for New Zealanders.
Well, you see, but then they haven't been to India and seen the different turbans they tie in Rajasthan, for example. They're quite different. And then if you go down south to Maharashtra, if you go to the villages, they've got a different style again. If you're a Sikh from Nairobi or any of the East African, they wear white turbans. And they're quite different. They've got a pointy end,
So when did being a Sikh become a more kind of deliberately important thing for you?
I really felt that there was something wrong when 5,000 Sikhs got slaughtered in Delhi, and my father was actually could have been one of them if he had been out that day. It was when Indira Gandhi was assassinated,
Yes.
and there was just indiscriminate sort of communal violence.
Slaughter, really.
And there's people haven't been brought to justice, and it was like a pogrom. It was quite controlled and it was quite political. And my parents, who were living in Delhi then, decided that it wasn't really safe, and they moved to Chandigarh. I must say that. All the sort of negative things that happened, my parents have never dwelled on it. I mean, they've never sort of, told us, you must hate someone because they're Hindu or Muslims or, In fact, they were, we had Hindu and Muslim friends. And our friends who are Muslims, celebrated Eid, they invited us and we celebrated their festival with them. And as they celebrated the Festival of Lights, Diwali with us. So, and I went to a school where, we had Hindu, Muslims, Christians, Buddhists, all kind of people. And so I actually came from a family which was quite tolerant about, and they weren't fanatical at all about their religion.
Not long after this, you stood for council?
Yes, I stood for council in 92.
Right.
One of the reasons I stood was because I'm a student of history and political science, and also I just felt that, Dunedin was part of me. My children were growing up there, and I'd sort of really loved the city, and it's such a lovely city for families. I just felt that, I wanted to be part of the city's development, and so I stood for my award.
Yes.
And took it very seriously. I really loved it.
One of the things that's seems to me as an outsider quite remarkable about Sikhism is the quite deliberate emphasis it gives on the status, very positive status of women.
Yeah, well, when actually you look back on my family and, the women were always respected, they obviously had different roles, but women who were actually educated and who attained sort of quite a high status in their work were very well thought of. They really respected as mothers, and, the role of a mother is extremely important. In our own family, my father asked for her advice in many things, and we heard that conversation. And I can never remember growing up, but my father had harsh words to say to my mother.
Yes.
And so it was always very respectful relationship, and girls were given equal chances, and so women do actually have a pretty good hearing, and Sikh women can actually get quite stroppy if they're actually being oppressed. Sikh women are pretty strong. And Glenn always sort of, he has a real sort of quip, and he said, "Don't you meddle with a Sikh woman."
And did this Sikh woman get stroppy with the Dunedin City Council?
Well, occasionally, yes.
Do you think your spirituality was a resource for that? Were you aware of that at the time, or is that something you would say looking back?
Well, I think it was more the sort of, being courageous, like, sort of saying what, you believe in. Because one of the things, in the Sikh tradition is that you work hard, and you don't give up, and it's also very important for Sikhs to actually do good works, and you work hard and you actually share your good fortune,
Sukhi, I'm interested in what you're saying about the egalitarian kind of role within Sikhism. But I'm also aware that Sikhs have a very prominent place in business community as well. Can you explore that kind of tension?
Business is actually seen as quite a normal part of life, and but as long as you work hard, you can accumulate wealth, but don't forget to share it.
You came to New Zealand 30 odd years ago, but other members of your family have come since then.
Yeah, well, my younger brother came to visit me in the mid-80s, and he said, "What a great place."
Hi, Jules. Hi, Jules. How are you? Nice to see you.
And my brother said, "Well, I want to actually be my own boss," and so he started. He started with a dairy, and just
In that traditional way, yes.
Yeah, absolutely, to actually accumulate some funds, really, and then he started with the first little India.
And how's business anyway?
My sister came and she said, "Well, why don't we do something like this?" So they actually opened the next little India in Queenstown. And then my brother went to Christchurch, and then slowly opened a few more. I think it is because we were brought up with a mother who actually loved to feed people. Mum trains the chefs and then sends them over, and they've got quite a flourishing business.
You have 2 children?
Yes.
Are they interested in Sikhism?
Yes, they are. My son especially, actually. I mean, he's been to India several times since he was, growing up, and whenever he goes and visits the Golden Temple. He just loves it, and he, I think, identifies himself to a certain extent as a Sikh, and he wants to learn more about it. And my daughter, not as much, but she did want to actually get married in the Sikh way.
Your husband hasn't become a Sikh?
No, he hasn't. No.
But again, that's an easy relationship in terms of spirituality.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because as I think that you have to be tolerant about other people's beliefs. And, all religions or spiritualities, if they're going to go towards the Great Spirit, who can fault that?
Yes.
Yeah?
When you want to engage with God in the Sikh tradition, is it prayer, is it meditation?
It's meditation, and it's actually listening to the Gurbani. It's written in poetry form, and it's quite...
This is the scriptures.
The scriptures, yes. It's quite beautiful poetry, actually. And there's some people who really, sing it beautifully. And the Granthi, the person who actually reads it, is only reading it, I mean, we don't have a priesthood in Sikhism. And so you go and you bow in front of the holy book, and you go and sit down, and the women sit on one side and the men sit on others. But there have been gurdwaras where, it's all combined, and you've got kids running around. One of the things that was mentioned, which was part of the reading of the Granth Sahib, was that, you don't just think about, the Almighty when you're in trouble. Think about the Almighty when you're really happy as well. And
that's nice, yes.
Sometimes you've got to be prompted about these things. Because obviously, when one's down and out, you look for strength and you look for answers. Then you have Kirtan, where people will sing the poetry, and usually very meaningful about, the Almighty, and, how to attain the Almighty, and, the way you actually lead your life.
Let's talk about the Almighty, if we can. That's the hard question. What do Sikhs mean when they talk about God?
Well, they believe that there is a strength and a power which is beyond human beings.
Right. So part of the point of the Sikh life is to live a particular kind of life which will lead to a positive rebirth.
Yes. And to be a good person.
Yes.
And, and there's goodness in everyone, and, just how to find that goodness. You've got to sort of give yourself a talking to now and again. The service itself, people become quite serious, and suddenly, I think you can see them sort of trying to work things out and get some enlightenment from it, There is the Ardas, which is the actual prayer of the Sikh community, which tells you about the history, and asks for blessings on the Sikh community. We're given the prasad, which is the blessed food, and it sort of is quite nourishing.
And that has a particular role within the ceremony?
Yes, it's it's blessed, yes. And it's really, once again, like a communal thing where, you're actually getting from the same utensil a food that has been blessed. And so everyone sort of, and you always sort of join your hands and sort of, thank the person who's given it to you. And it's delicious and it's sweet. So, it's quite a nice ritual, actually. Mum used to make it during holy days or when it was, birthdays. And early in the morning, you could smell this sugar and ghee, being sort of, and flour all together being roasted. And it was the most beautiful smell. And then we can use the hall for langar, which is sharing food with the community. It's really a food of the Guru. The Golden Temple has 2 of those langars every day, and it's an open kitchen, basically. And you're not compelled to go every week. There is no compulsion about anything. You don't, I think a lot of Sikh families now want their children to actually learn Punjabi, so when they go back to India, they can converse with their relatives, and they can also, learn about what's being said. I've been sort of generally quite an optimistic person, and I don't get down too much. I always sort of say, well, there's always another day, and there are always so many good things, and we're so lucky in New Zealand, really.
Yes.
We are, and we should really count our blessings.
Your daily life in Wanaka, you are exploring your spirituality there?
Yes, I am, but I'm also growing a garden, and I think anyone who can actually sort of work with the soil, and that, I think it must be part of my sort of agrarian background. I just love to sort of create a garden now that I've got time. And just looking at Black Peak and those wonderful mountains, and it's quite a serene place. And I was a member of the Green Party, and sustainability is really quite important, and the earth is important. One of the things that I read once, and it's in the Hindu text somewhere, which said, walk softly on the earth. And that's always sort of struck me as, being careful that, we don't injure, Mother Earth, basically. I think contemplation and having space to actually clear the head and be a little bit more conscious. Because sometimes, in sort of modern life, and, when you have a job like a male job with, 24/7, you can just be sort of, on that sort of little treadmill going round and round. And I think everyone needs time out. I think yoga is quite good.
Focus on your inhalation and exhalation until they are of equal length.
You practice yoga?
Very badly, I must say, but I'm just starting to actually get more time to do, to keep fit as well, and I think it's very important, the physical and the mental is very important. One of the things that's said is that the epidemic in sort of Western civilization or Western kind of living, which applies now to I think most countries in the world, is that depression and sort of mental illness. It's a lack of spiritualism, I think, and time to actually refresh yourself. I used to get quite upset about war and about suffering, and You found you can let some of that go? Well, you still feel quite upset about suffering.
The Sikh tradition, it has things to say about the future of the world.
I think it actually says things about how you can actually find peace with yourself. You know, everyone has their own spiritualism, I think, you know, and you can't prescribe to people. And I think it's a sort of a self-enlightenment, I suppose, and, you know, and you're sort of trying to try and get that depth of what's good, what's blissful.
So where to now for Sukhi Turner?
Well, I think actually Lynn's very keen on attaching me to Wanaka, and he says, "You're not going anywhere." He said I did 3 years too many in the Mayoralty, and he sort of very sort of male sort of tone said to someone with great feeling, he says, "Now I've got my wife back." So I don't know if I'm going to be this dutiful wife. I mean, he still has to share the cooking. So he's, no, it's both of us sort of spending more time and also, you know, enjoying the tranquility and the peace.
You can look out at the Black Peak and across the water.
Yes, absolutely. And so those wonderful mountains. They're my mountains.
This program was made with funding from New Zealand On Air.